Councillor Roger Harmer to move the motion, which he has given notice.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move the motion in my and Councillor Harry's names. Effective and timely planning enforcement is one key part of creating the rules-based system that is vital for any fair society, on which our well-being and prosperity as a city depends. There are many other elements of a rules enforcement that this council has agency over, such as property licensing, fly tipping, parking and moving traffic regulations. And as Liberal Democrats, we strongly believe that the effective enforcement of these rules have been woefully neglected in this city for far too long, leading to a sense of frustration and unfairness amongst residents, especially the majority who follow the rules and see that those who don't get away with it far too often. In the recent past, we have used our motion to highlight other aspects of this, such as those related to moving traffic offences. And today we focus on planning enforcement. Now, I want to make it clear at the outset that this is in no way a negative reflection of our hard-working planning enforcement officers, many of whom are just as frustrated as us. Rather, it is a call to give them the tools they need. Let me illustrate the reason for this motion by using the example of a former care home for the elderly in my ward, which closed a long time ago and sat empty for many years. Then in the spring of 2022, it was reopened as a 70-plus bed exempt property without planning approval, which, even for exempt properties, is needed for such larger properties. Planning enforcement visited a few days later and told them they needed planning approval. They were given several months to submit an application, which they eventually did at the end of the year via an application for a certificate of lawfulness. After some requests for more information, this was turned down in August 23. This led to a planning application being submitted, which in August 24 was turned down. At the last moment possible, this was appealed to the planning inspectorate, who turned it down in July 25, and the enforcement notice was then served, which has to be complied with by the end of April next year. So what all this means is that by then, it could have been running for over 4 years, generating a huge income without the planning approval required by this council and indeed the planning inspectorate. And no legal action has been possible during that time, because it's not until you fail to comply with the deadline in the enforcement notice that the council can go to court to get an order against you. It's absurd. And when you explain it to residents, they just see it as absurd. And of course, this is not a one-off example, far from it. And it's bringing the whole planning enforcement system into disrepute. Now, I think there are good arguments based on what is happening for a complete restructure of planning law to make such cases a thing of the past. I understand the need for faster approval of major projects, and of course the Labour amendment talks about the resources that put in to make that happen. But hand in hand with that should go a much faster planning enforcement system, and frankly significant businesses should not be able to open new operations without planning approval already in place. Now, this motion doesn't go that far, but looks instead at 3 things that could be done within the current system to make it quicker and more effective. First, we should lobby government to speed up the planning appeals process. There are several key appeals across Birmingham that are over a year old. One in my ward, a 12-bed HMO without planning approval, where the enforcement case was opened in 2020, went to the planning inspector on the 25th of November 2024, and we are still waiting for a decision. It's likely, I gather, to come in around 14 months from the notice date. And it's worse than that. For most planning appeals, you have planning rejections, you have over 6 months to appeal. So if you wait until the last moment, you can spin the process out for over 18 months, just to check if the council got it right. And all the time, you're earning money from a property without planning approval. It's ridiculous. The government should be bringing the decision process down to no more than 3 months, and I would argue that you should have no more than a month to appeal. Secondly, we need to look at the resourcing of the planning enforcement team. The delays are just in getting a first visit to all of the most egregious cases are months long, and that is purely down to a lack of officers. For some businesses, such as unapproved car washes, this contributes to a process where even when it does finally catch up with you, years after you start work, you can simply shut up shop and move somewhere else, restarting the whole process. Just look, for example, at the spate of unauthorised shop canopies that has grown up across the city. So much that a dedicated officer has to be earmarked to tackle them now, and he certainly will be busy. But why did it get that bad in the first place? Because if you don't take action against them, shop owners will see it as a green light to put one up on their own shop too. Indeed, they will feel that they will be losing out if they don't and neighbouring shops do. Now, call me cynical, but perhaps if we had enough capacity to cope with the volume of reports, then we might have an online reporting system that didn't seem designed to deter residents from completing the form. And while we're on the issue of bureaucracy, let's see how AI can help us so that our planning enforcement officers are out on site more often and stuck in the office with paperwork much less. And finally, let's look at how planning enforcement can be integrated into more other enforcement processes in the Council as part of the work to break down the dreaded silo mentality that we all see on a day-to-day basis. Many planning enforcement cases originate from reports of other offences, such as fly tipping, that identifies an unauthorised HMO or flats that have recently opened. As far as is practical, we should move more to an area-based approach with enforcement officers getting to know an area of the city really well and tackling, at least at first visit level, whatever offences they see. So, Lord Mayor, our planning enforcement process needs a radical reboot. The government needs to play its part, but let's take the strong, decisive action we need to ensure it tackles breaches of the rules in a faster and more effective way. I move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Harmer.